Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Checking the pulse of Husker Nation, brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Also, carrikerchronicles.com. It's where all your Husker sports hopes and dreams will come true. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just science. Now, before I bring on our special guest for this show, if you want to show love to the Nebraska women's sports teams at the university across the board. Women's basketball is going to be playing in the NCAA tournament. Huskers softball, number 19 in the country, off to a 19-6 start. As always, volleyball is going to volleyball and do some great things. But women's gymnast Emma Spence is officially nominated for the 2025 AAIA Award, which is essentially the Heisman Trophy Award for women's gymnastics. So if you want to show this some love, smash the like button. And I looked, less than 50% of the people who watch this show aren't subscribed and or don't have their notification bells turned on. So if you want to, go ahead and turn those things on so you don't miss any of the stuff we're putting out throughout the off season. It's pretty much every Tuesday throughout the off season, 6 p.m. on YouTube, 7 p.m. Central Time on social media, any necessary gut reactions as well. One last big time announcement. I'm pretty excited about this. The Carriker Chronicles football camp registration will officially open next week. Heisman Trophy winner Eric Crouch will be there. Thumbs up on the screen for that. And Amon Green, Green Bay Packers Hall of Famer, two-time national champ for the Huskers, will now officially be there as well. I'll be there, and I'm working on one more gigantic Husker legend who's a 90% yes, but you'll be able to register for that camp starting next week. That'll be July 9th at the LYF Lincoln Youth Football Fields here in Lincoln. But now let's bring on our special guest. He's a two-time all-conference performer, Nebraska single-game rushing record yardage holder, 307 yards versus Missouri, Nebraska offensive MVP 2009-2010, NFL All-Rookie Team 2011, and the Washington Redskins / Commanders, whatever you want to call them, franchise record holder for receptions in a single game with 14, Mr. Roy Helu. How you doing, my friend?
Good to see you, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I appreciate you joining me, and it's always fun whenever we get a chat. I get to bring you on the show, but as I do, I'm going to go backwards before I go forward. So you were originally committed to play for Bill Callahan. You were part of that 2007 recruiting class yourself, Jared Crick, Prince Amukamara, a lot of other great players. But I'm curious, because in 2008, Callahan and his staff were let go. 2008, here comes Bo Pelini. What was the biggest difference from Bill Callahan to Bo Pelini when Coach Pelini came in?
Accountability. So instantly, we started having a class checkers, and it had to do with his philosophy of being accountable for our work off the field and on the field. He was a big believer in believing that whatever we were off the field was what we were going to be on the field. So if we were undisciplined off the field, we would be undisciplined on the field. Although he was a player's coach, he drove us really hard. Like it was, he was relatable. And when he took us to the edge and the brink of exhaustion, he always would peel back. So he was a mix of a player's coach, which was different from Bill, but drove us just as hard as Callahan did.
All right, so I interviewed Prince last week. It just so happened that you guys were scheduled to go back to back. That wasn't on purpose, just how schedules worked out. But he said something that surprised me because he came in 2007 along with you, as I mentioned. He said he felt like an outsider on the team when he first got here. And then he just kind of randomly he's like, I felt like Roy and myself were kind of outsiders on the team when we first got here. But I wanted to ask you, because obviously by the time you were done, you were a team leader, someone people look up to. But did you initially feel like maybe you had a hard time fitting in? I don't know how to put it, but how'd you feel when you first got on campus in 2007?
Well, I don't know if you chalk it up to our personalities or if you chalk it up to youthfulness and coming from California and Arizona. Either way, we were, for the most part, we were West Coast kids. I mean, we were flamboyant. We walked to the beat of our own drum with our personalities as well. And so I think it was just a mix of a ton of things. It's not Nebraska's fault at all. Nebraska is the best state in the union by far. And I grew up in California. So it was nothing but just our personalities mixed with the new setting and then where we came from.
If I had to guess, and obviously I just left in 2006. We just missed each other by a year at Nebraska. We were teammates in DC for a brief time. I would just have to guess it's a gigantic shift in culture. Like when you talked about Callahan and Pelini, I played for both. They are gargantuanly different people. I would venture a guess that had something to do with that, but those are just my guesses. So I'm going to fast forward just a little bit here because I remember we're getting ready to play the Giants. I think the next day I was already at the Skins, but I'm watching you and I'm watching that Missouri game. All right. Let me see. October 30th, 2010, 307 yards. You averaged 11 yards per carry in that game. You set the single game rushing record. And I always wanted to ask you this, like, what's going through your mind when you're just breaking off big run after big run after big run? Like, what's going through your mind as that game's unfolding?
Well, I went in with a head cold, so that's a lip fact. Unless you've talked to me, you wouldn't know that. Missouri had just upset Oklahoma, who I believe was number 1 in the nation, and their defense was so good, so aggressive. They played as a unit, and they were really athletic with first-round draft picks, all the above. So waking up on Saturday, I was like, seriously? I have a head cold on this game? And so, I lost to Texas the last home game prior. For me, I felt like we had a chip on our shoulder. So then I just woke up and I thought, all right, it is what it is. And the blessing of having a head cold is you just go straight off of muscle memory and you don't overthink things. So it was one of those rare games up to that point in my career where I had no nerves. I actually didn't even think. I didn't envision runs. I didn't envision and anticipate anything. I literally just went out there, ball was snapped after play was called, and just ran. Now, I'm grateful because it was a game in which the defense was over aggressive. We had the right play calls, and also there were gargantuan holes, man. So it wasn't like I had to think much anyways. And the best part of that story is that I got to share a great memory with my dad after we went to go eat at Laszlo's. And I sat down with him pretty exhausted. And I said, Dad, I think that was a pretty good game. And he's like, yeah, that was a pretty good game. So the reason I even asked him was because the week prior, he had visited and we had just played Oklahoma State. And he watched the game. He was at my apartment, away game. He watched the game, and then when I came back, he said, hey, Junior, did you think that you rushed through the holes? And I was like, no. I didn't even think. I just had a retort for him. I was like, no, I ran really hard. I feel like I'm priding myself in just running really hard this year as a senior. And he said, okay, all right. And then so I thought to myself, I just sat there and I thought, man, my dad is a well-known rugby player. He played for the American Eagle team, the national team. So then I thought, man, maybe I'm missing something. We had already done film review by this time, and I didn't get any feedback that I was rushing my reads. So it's Thursday night. We're done with all of our practices. And then I just asked my dad, hey, why don't you I'm going to take you to the film room. You show me. So then we went to the film room. We watched the game. And as I hold the clicker, he's saying, pause right there. Don't you think you could have hit this hole? And I was past the hole by a couple steps, running really hard. But I realized if I was to be patient, then I would have actually got to the right hole as it opened at the right time. All that's to say is I contribute the game to God's plan for me having a head cold, mixed in also with my dad's wisdom so that I was aware of just slowing everything down.
Dude, that is phenomenal. I don't think I've ever heard that before. That is awesome right there. A less fun game to talk about if you're a Nebraska fan or former player, the 2009 Big 12 championship game. I'm going to ask in my opinion, the most obvious question in history. Okay, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Should 1 second have been put back on the clock at the end of that game or not? But the second part of that question is, if that second isn't put back on, you guys win the Big 12 championship. We're sitting here 15 years later. How much do you think the last decade and a half of Nebraska football possibly looks different if that outcome of that game is different?
Bo Pelini still is fired because personalities don't mix with the state values, but he has a longer leash, and we look at Bo Pelini with more reverence and appreciation for what he did. Let me answer the question now directly. So yes, I definitely think that was a Yankee call and the game should have been over. I also know that I can be partial and the whole state will agree with me and Texas will disagree, whatever. It was a ball. I ran over to their sideline, and our offense was just not good that year. I was injured. We weren't clicking at other positions, but we had really good players. Niles Paul, Brandon Kinney, other guys, good line. It just didn't mesh well at the time, but our defense was balling, and Sue went crazy. So when I thought won, I did the good, mature, 20-year-old thing, ran over to their sideline and started trash talking them. I regret it. They were undefeated, and
Yeah.
they would have Alabama a run for their money if Colt McCoy didn't get hurt on the first drive in the championship. After us, all that's to say is so good. So I really appreciated beating them, or so I thought. I instantly regretted it when the refs ran up to me, grabbed my chest, blew the whistle, said, "Hey, go back, go back." I looked back, and I guess I had led a few other of my teammates and encouraged them just by running over there to join me. And we realized something was going on. And then history is what it is. They ended up winning. Now, to answer the second part of your question, what would have changed? I personally think about this every time I'm with my family members and other people who look back on from the time that Frank Solich was fired to right now, and they say everything has been downhill since Frank Solich got fired. And I think to myself, oh my goodness, Bo Pelini flipping us from going 5-7 to then going 9-4 and then being a 10-4 coach the rest of his tenure, with a lot of years where he was, 10-1, 10-2, and didn't finish the year well, is overlooked, although it shouldn't. And the strides he made and progress he made to make Nebraska more relevant than we were since and even before, because we don't have this, like we don't have the conference championship. Even in 10, man, I think we were up 17-0 in the Oklahoma game, and we were better that year. And then how they came back, and it's like, and then he goes to the Big Ten championship and then loses that by a whooping. And that was a Wisconsin team that didn't earn it. I think Ohio State was on probation. And so I look back and I'm like, winning that, potentially one, potentially two, and then maybe the third, who knows? I just know that his reputation and how we look at him and how we look back on history, instead of looking back from us old heads now saying, if they didn't fire Frank Solich, then I think that we would have been, if they didn't fire Bo Pelini, but that's not history, unfortunately.
I think you make a lot of fair points in there, because a lot of people will go back to like 01, when the last time we played for a national title, or 99, the last time we won a conference title. I do think it would be looked at differently. 09 goes different. You make a great point about that 2010 Big 12 championship game versus Oklahoma. Another game I watched in between meetings on a Saturday night, getting ready to play on a Sunday game. I was like, oh my God, we're killing them. And then I was like, oh no, what? Oh, I got to go to meetings now, and obviously you were there, but I think you make a phenomenal point. To that Texas game, Colt McCoy has said when they played in the Rose Bowl versus Alabama, he goes, I knew everything they were going to do it before they did it. And then he got hurt and a true freshman came in, and obviously Bama was a great team, but maybe that game goes differently. All right, man, your first start in the NFL, 2011 for the Skins versus the Niners. The question is this, because they're both obviously memorable games for you. The record-setting game versus Missouri, or that first start where you catch 14 passes, which to this day is still a franchise single-game receptions record in a single game for the Skins/Commanders. Which game is more memorable to you? Because that was also your first NFL start.
Okay, real quick. I love that you say Redskins. Me too. I hope they bring back the name. I don't like the PC that ended up taking the name away. So all I'm saying is I'm a big Redskins fan. You can use whatever you want. I appreciate you as a host saying both for whatever floats people's boat. I'm just letting you try land. To answer the question, because my dad's attached to the Missouri game, that's my answer. It's most memorable. But I will say, it's really close, because to be a starter in the NFL, and then for me to get that record, and then thirdly, for me, contextually, I was really discouraged leading up to being named the starter. And then so I was, they're giving me a shot. And then lastly, it was the best defense possibly in the decade that year. Definitely that year. No one had scored, and they were my hometown team. And playing in the NFL,
right, yeah.
My hometown team and playing in the NFL. Also, who was it? Jim Harbaugh was their coach, and I really wanted to play. I'm a big fan of his, and so I wanted to prove myself there. Also to Mike Shanahan, that him and Kyle and that whole great staff they had, they didn't, waste trading a draft pick for me, and it was just a whole bunch of stuff that mixed together. And then for it to go as well as it went, I'm always going to hold it in really high regard.
That Niners defense had Justin Smith, had Patrick Willis, I can't remember. I think they made the NFC title game that year too and lost to the Giants. I can't remember for sure. So it's interesting. I've been asked about why I have a Commander's helmet instead of a Redskins helmet. And some people have called me PC. It's inaccurate. I got the Redskins helmet right here. My
bigger too.
Yeah, well, yeah. The reason I have that is because that's the current name of the team. They don't call the LA Dodgers the Brooklyn Dodgers anymore. So for all those people who've asked me why, I've got both. I'm not ducking anything. That's just the current name of the team, which is why I say Redskins / Commanders. All right, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, and then we're going to talk a little bit of modern Nebraska football real quick. But I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors, DPS Concrete Construction. Ladies and gentlemen, they do a phenomenal job. Jason Armstrong is the owner. He has multiple businesses that we're going to start promoting here on the show because he does a phenomenal job with all these businesses. But if you need concrete work done, retaining wall work done, nobody is better. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Also, Bonzel Pool and Spa. They did our family's pool, our family's hot tub. They now take care of the pool, take care of the hot tub. So clearly, I trust them. If you want these aforementioned items put in, hey, they're the folks to go to, bonzelpool.com. If you have the aforementioned items and you want them taken care of, go to bonzelpool.com. All right, my man. So 2 years ago, Nebraska was number 2 in the Big Ten in rushing offense. Now, Harburg's more of a running quarterback, and we struggled to throw the ball. So it's going to lend to running the ball more. But last year, we definitely regressed. Okay, regardless, Dylan's not necessarily a running quarterback, but even when we ran the ball, the holes just weren't there as much, or we weren't having as much success. All right. Now, it was interesting. After the USC game, offensive coordinator Dana Holgorsen actually said, hey, the holes were there. The backs just weren't hitting the holes, which I thought was interesting. So here's my question. How does a running back, and you've already kind of addressed this a little bit, if there are big holes there, how does a running back miss those big holes? At least that's what Dana said. I'll be honest with you. I saw something different, but I'm not the OC. And what advice would you give the running backs in order to hit the holes more effectively?
Yeah, patience. Everyone should watch Le'Veon Bell's years in Pittsburgh when he played for the Steelers. So that would be the range from 2014 to maybe 18. Every running back needs an extreme version of pain in order for them to feel permission to slow down. So you want to think slow to speed through type of feel. You know, when you run a wide zone scheme, you're as a running back, you're gonna feel like you have to rush because as you're running, things are supposed to open up, and the linemen are running too. So in your mind, you start to speed stuff up. In a gap scheme, when you have pullers, it invites you to sit behind and hide. And I would encourage running backs to do both, whether it's wide zone, sweeps, if you have pullers, if it's a gap scheme, no matter what, you want to, whatever your height is, play hide and go seek to a certain degree, slow down your footwork, and rather be chastised for missing the hole because you were too slow than going too fast. I think it's with adrenaline and competitors experiencing nervousness, you have to slow everything down, and whatever it takes for you to get there, having that mindset, watching film on people is going to be the greatest way to get there.
All right, man. So a lot of people are excited about Emmett Johnson. He's expected to be the feature back this year. I still say you always have to earn it. Okay. But what advice would you give Emmett now that he's expected to be the main running back this year?
Great question. Don't overthink your role in the offense. Just have fun. And I know it sounds like it's academic 101 Pop Warner wisdom, but when you become starter, there will be a temptation to tighten up. Don't do that. You got to where you were because you play loose, and we play well when we play loose. And so as a starter, don't think of losing job. If the coach has chosen you, then you're not thinking this is my job to lose. You're just thinking of how can I compete against, who is on the opposite side of the ball. On a day-to-day basis in practice, have goals. For me, going into my junior year, I had goals for practices, not game, and they'll build into games. And if you're going to become what you practice, and that's what practice is for. So to practice one thing, focus on that, step by step, you'll increase and get better over time.
Dude, that is phenomenal advice. I love that. A couple more questions about modern football. And then you actually had shared a story on this show 2 years ago that wasn't I wasn't happy with the way it was edited. So I want to bring that back because that story was phenomenal. But before we get to that, so Emmett Johnson, proven experience. People kind of know what to expect out of him. You got Quentin Ives, who we've heard his name talked about in press conferences. You got a couple of young, talented, true freshmen. There's some concern maybe about the depth or lack thereof or proven running backs behind Emmett. What are your thoughts on that as far as Emmett being the main known guy and then a lot of other guys who just don't have the experience, at least not to this point? Should fans be concerned at all, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, fans should not be concerned. I'm a big believer that seniority only matters as so far as it helps the group, or if they have experience and they're the best player. Those two things. So an experienced guy, if they're humble, they can help the young guy in the film room. They can help him in practice. They can give him wisdom. And then the second thing is, if he is the best player, then the experience adds to it. But I am a big believer that you play the best player and you get them ready to play. And if they're not ready to play, then that's where you're playing the people who are, but you're getting them rep. That was my experience in Nebraska. And by God's grace, it all ended up working out for me. But I sensed that I just thought I was ready earlier. That's all, Adam, without saying. If you look at the best programs, they play their sophomores, true freshmen, true sophomores, if they are the best players. So for me, I think, fan base, don't worry about it. If the coach is going to play the best player, then whether they're a freshman, whether they're a senior, whoever they are, or if it changes in the year, then it really doesn't matter. The hope is just that we have a coach who's playing the best players.
All right, man. So we've kind of alluded to it ever since Frank Solich got let go, Callahan era, the Pelini era, which had the most amount of wins. And then you've got the Riley and the Frost era, which were obviously frustrating. Matt Rhule, why or why not? I don't want to ask a leading question. Why or why not is he the guy to get us back on track to where Nebraska fans want Nebraska football to be?
Okay, that's my question, Adam.
Ooh.
Where does Nebraska want to be? Because for me, I see a fan base that is the best fan base in the nation, but we're human, which means that we're going to get conditioned to whatever level he brings us to. So I feel like we are, right, we're used to the 5 and 7 seasons. So then I think Rhule is going to bring us to winning seasons. Is that where the fan base will be 2 thumbs up? Then there's going to be a year where we then say, okay, now when are we going to get to the conference championship game? And then if we get there, it's winning. And so for me, I don't even know if the fan base knows where we want to go except for winning again. And if that's the case, then he's our guy, baby. Absolutely believe that we are going to have winning seasons with Coach Rhule. If this is what I'm guessing based off of my theory, and my theory before we had NIL was that whatever a coach was in their 3rd year is what they were going to be with regularity for the rest. That has changed because of NIL, and as depending on how much money you have, it can come quicker or it can come slower. And then I think it's going to be infrequent, and time will tell. So all I'm saying is I think that it's a little bit up in the air of what record we're going to have with him based off of the players we get. So I'll just go ahead and say that I feel very comfortable that we won't have any more losing seasons. Very comfortable. I think he has charisma, confidence, humility. He can get in front of a team and you can see they love him. He recruits well. He's doing a good job of changing things up with coaching. And I see more progress in accountability than the last coach that we had. And I think that's a plus. And I think it's okay for us, if anyone's frustrated in the fan base that we haven't turned it over quicker, I would say don't be frustrated. He doesn't have the personality necessarily to flip it in year 1. That takes a really mean individual. and Rhule is not that, but he's...
Did you say Pelini flipped it in year 1? Is that what are you saying?
I love Bo. I don't mean that.
No, I know.
I'm just saying, boy, he would get after it. And so all I'm saying is I wouldn't be surprised. I'm very confident he's a winning coach, and I wouldn't be surprised that he's the 8-4 coach when he's done. I wouldn't be surprised that he's an 8-4 coach. Yeah.
I was just giving you a hard time right there. I have yet to meet a guy who's played for Bo that didn't love Bo, to be honest with you. I not one. I've never met one that didn't love playing for Bo. So again, a couple years ago, you shared this Bo Pelini story. Go ahead and share the Bo Pelini story from a couple of years ago about checking classes. I'm going to let you tell it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, high accountability guy. He flipped the culture because of that. And what I'm about to share with you, the results of it was that I wanted to transfer and I wanted to leave.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's the immediate future. So right when Bo comes in, and Bo is one of the best coaches I could ever have played for. I have to preface everything. So what happens is he comes in and now we have to go to class. Now we have to sit front. And I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. First semester, Callahan I didn't show up for the last month or month and a half of my class and whatever. And then I would show up for the final was. All that's to say is he comes in and now he's taken these spoiled kids, which was me and the players, and he's now chastising us and teaching us discipline.
Yep.
So what happened was he calls a team meeting, and we're having these team meetings every week because we're getting in trouble. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy is another level of insanity. He is before the story, he's videotaping. Here's one that maybe many people know. He's videotaping us on winter conditioning. I didn't know this until I graduated. And we were running with our jerseys on. They were the hardest conditioning sessions I ever had in my life. And he ran them 3 days in a row. And depending on if we were disciplined or not, the next week it would be 2 days. And then we would realize, oh, so-and-so's kicked off the team. What he was doing in the conditioning, if we were cheating, gone. So he would kill it. We had our jerseys on. And then at the end, he would make us do competitive sprint conditioning after the drills. So by the time it's this bad, I'm hunched over, and then we begin the conditioning part of the sprints. Well, people started cheating. We have 130 guys at the time. So you can hide, especially special teamers and walk-ons, you're going to hide and just skip your turn. They end up, I'm exhausted. And then we have this meeting to build up to the one I told last time I was on. And so I'm going to have to change names here because they're players and teammates that I love. He calls the meeting. Y'all know we're in trouble. We come in. We sit down. He ends up chastising us. And this was after year one. We had just gone 9-4. And I'm thinking to myself, man, we're doing really well. And he comes in and he starts reading off a list of my teammates. And he says, John Mark, stand up. And we're like, well, what's going on? He makes John Mark stand up. And then he starts reading off things like this: sleeping in class, chewing tobacco, kicked up his feet, and then walked out of class. He's like, what do you have to say for yourself, John? Well, Coach, shut up and sit down. Bo Pelini scowl. And then he says, John Smith, stand up. And he stands up. It was hilarious. He said, I got a report and it says this: you crumbled a ball of paper, you threw it at a student, and you fell asleep. Someone had to wake you up. Is that true? Well, shut up. Stand up. Yep. He goes through about 7 different teammates of mine. The most funny was that he didn't know one of them. He said, John Papio. He misread the name. It was so the guy's name was Mark something. His real name. He's a walk-on, and so he wasn't known. So Bo outs himself. He misreads the name, and everyone feels the tension in the room. Like, you better stand up right now. But we're also like, who is this guy? And then he raises his hand and he's like, are you talking about John Domenico? And he says, shut up. I don't want to. It was just like that skit on Key and Peele where the hood teacher goes in and starts reading instead of Aaron. So this was before that, but it's a tense moment. He has this cup of coffee. He's scolding us. and he says, "I did not come here to go 9-4." He grabs the coffee and he throws it against the screen, which we play all of our film. It explodes, and he walks out. And everyone was like, "Oh my goodness, this guy demands perfection." And he always talked about perfection. And so that was the difference between Bo and our prior coach, was he demanded for perfection. He talked about perfection all the time, and he held us to accountability, and so much so that he would call together team meetings and absolutely get after us. So that's my Bo Pelini story of the type of coach he was.
Dude, that's an awesome story. I'm glad folks will get to hear the whole one this time. You even shared a couple things you didn't last time, like, made me want to transfer, and the cutting guys from videotaping winter conditioning. So I played for half my career with Solich, half was Callahan. I've never had it confirmed, but coaches do funny things. I'm still convinced to this day, not confirmed, but I'm convinced they put microphones in our locker room and they were listening to what we were saying. Now, it's never been confirmed, but coaches do funny things, man, and there's a reason for it all. So, all right, man, I appreciate you taking the time. I know for those who don't know, Roy's married to former Nebraska volleyball player, national champion, Danny Mancuso. You guys have a lot of children just like we do. Make sure you tell the family we said hello.
Yeah, will do. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate you, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder, the Carriker Chronicles football camp registration officially will open next week. For now, it's July 9th. Amon Green, Eric Crouch, myself, and hopefully a few other Husker legends will be there. 3 questions. Let me know your answer in the comments below. Number 1, do you believe Emmett Johnson, will have an all Big Ten type season? Number 2, what's the biggest key to Nebraska fixing their running game? I like a lot of what Roy had to say earlier. Number 3, what's your favorite Roy Helu memory? Let me know in the comments below. Till next time, go Big Red Nose. Remember to throw the ball.